The vast majority of Americans are going to be absolutely blindsided by what is coming. They don't understand how our financial system works. They don't understand how vulnerable it is, and most of them blindly trust that our leaders know exactly what they're doing and that they'll be able to fix our problems. As a result, most Americans are simply not prepared for the massive storm that's heading our way. Most American families are living paycheck to paycheck. Most of them are not storing up emergency food and supplies, and only a very small percentage of them are buying gold and silver for investment purposes. They seem to have forgotten what happened back in 2008. When the financial markets crashed, millions of Americans lost their jobs. Because most of them were living on the financial edge, millions of them also lost their homes. Unfortunately, most Americans seem convinced that it will not happen again. Right now, we seem to be living in a hope bubble, and people have become very complacent. For a while there, being a prepper was very trendy, but now concern about a coming economic collapse seems to have subsided. What a tragic mistake. As I pointed out before, our entire financial system is a giant Ponzi scheme, and there are already signs that our financial markets are about to implode once again. Those that have not made any preparations for what is coming are going to regret it bitterly. The following are 30 signs that most Americans will be wiped out by the coming economic collapse. Number 1. According to a survey that was just released, 78% of all Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. But most Americans are acting as if their jobs will always be there. But the truth is that mass layoffs can occur at any time. Number 2, 28% of all Americans do not have even a single penny saved up. Americans are good at spending, but lousy at saving. According to Bankrate's latest financial security index, nearly 3 in 10 U.S. adults have no emergency savings. Number 3, 58% of all Americans have $1,000 or less saved up. Since 2015, Go Banking Rates has asked Americans how much they have in savings. Each year, the survey results have shown that a majority of adults don't even have $1,000 in a savings account. That trend continues in 2019. Number 4, less than 1 out of every 5 Americans has enough money stored away to cover 6 months of expenses. Number 5, wages continue to fall, even as the cost of living continues to go up. Today, the average income for the bottom 90% of all income earners in America is just $36,182. An increasing percentage of American families are just trying to find a way to survive from month to month. Number 6, 78 million Americans are participating in the gig economy because full-time jobs just don't pay enough to make ends meet these days. Number 7. Back in 2007, about 28% of all working families were considered to be among the working poor. Today, that number is up to 32%, even though our politicians tell us that the economy is supposedly recovering. Number 8. In Arkansas, Mississippi, and New Mexico, more than 40% of all working families are considered to be low income. Number 9. Families that have a head of household under the age of 30 have a poverty rate of 37%. Number 10. More than 1 out of every 4 children in the United States is enrolled in the food stamp program. Number 11. The number of families in the United States living on $2 a day or less more than doubled between 1996 and 2019. Number 12. 85% of middle-class Americans say it is more difficult now than a decade ago to maintain their standard of living. Some 62% say a lot of the blame lies with Congress. A slight majority say a lot lies with banks and other financial institutions. Just 8% blame the middle class itself. Number 13. Small business is becoming an endangered species in America. In fact, only about 7% of all non-farm workers in the United States are self-employed at this point. That means that the vast majority of Americans are depending on someone else to provide them with an income. But what is going to happen as those jobs disappear? Number 14. The average American has $38,000 in debt, a quarter of which comes directly from credit card charges. In December 2018, consumer debt overall hit a record high of $4 trillion. Credit cards, student loans, mortgages, car loans, personal loans. Most Americans have a combination of these sources of debt, and despite their best intentions, Americans are digging themselves deeper into a hole each year. Number 15. In 1980, the average American worker's debt was 1.96 times larger than his or her monthly salary. Today, that number has ballooned to 5. Number 16. 102 million working-age Americans do not have a job right now. That number is higher than it was at any point during the last recession. Number 17. In the United States today, the average young adult with student loan debt has a negative net worth. Number 18. Almost 51 million U.S. households can't afford basics like rent and food. Number 19. According to the Federal Reserve, 4 out of 10 Americans do not have enough money to cover an unexpected $400 expense without borrowing the money or selling something they own. Number 20. 22% of all Americans cannot pay all of their bills in a typical month. Number 21. Today, a higher percentage of Americans are dependent on the government than ever before. More than half of Americans receive more money in various types of government transfer payments such as Medicare, Medicaid, food stamps, Social Security than they pay in federal taxes. So, what is going to happen when the government handout gravy train comes to an end? Number 22. As of the latest data released on August 2nd, 2019, the total is 35.9 million of Americans receiving food stamps, which is more than the entire population of Venezuela, Peru, or Malaysia. Number 23. Incredibly, a higher percentage of children is living in poverty in America today than was the case back in 1975. Number 24. It's estimated that less than 10% of the U.S. population owns any gold or silver for investment purposes. The World Gold Council, which gathers and disseminates mountains of statistics about gold, says it can provide no estimate for the number of Americans who own gold as an investment. Metals Focus, a London-based precious metals consultant, says it has no figures that it can release. When I passed along an estimate that fewer than 10% of American adults own gold as an investment, a spokesman wouldn't confirm but hinted that it was accurate. A detailed 2010 poll designed to elicit the views of Americans sympathetic to the Tea Party movement found that 5% of those who viewed the movement favorably said that they had purchased gold coins or bars in the preceding 12 months. The poll did not report a result for the same question from the general population. Many of the newsletters and consultants that advise people to buy precious metals estimate that between 1 and 3% of the American population owns precious metals. These guesses suggest that somewhere between 2.5 million and 25 million Americans own gold as an investment, a range so wide it makes any concrete analysis impossible. Number 25. It has been estimated that there are approximately 3 million preppers in the United States, but that means that almost everyone else is not prepping. 26. 44% of all Americans do not have first aid kits in their homes. 27. 48% of all Americans do not have any emergency supplies stored up. 28. 53% of all Americans do not have a 3-day supply of non-perishable food and water in their homes. 29. One survey asked Americans how long they thought they would survive if the electrical grid went down for an extended period of time. Incredibly, 21% said that they would survive for less than a week. An additional 28% said that they would survive for less than 2 weeks, and nearly 75% said they would be dead before the 2-month mark. 30. According to a survey conducted by the Adelphi University Center for Health Innovation, 55% of Americans believe that the government will come to their rescue when disaster strikes. Just because you are living a comfortable middle-class lifestyle today does not mean that it will always be that way. If the U.S. economy crashes and you lose your job, how will you and your family survive? Will you and your family end up homeless and totally dependent on the government?